getting someone to own culture is really special. Is that I found over the years of seeing hiring managers who haven't worked with First Nations people before, and hearing their stories. Hiring managers go, wow, like that person has an amazing story. Like I'd love them, in my environment to teach my other staff. So owning your own story and owning who you are can be I feel your superpower, because First Nations people, no matter where you're from, if you're a city blackfella or you're from the country, we all have our own story, and if we can own that, hiring managers who probably haven't worked in the space before can see that as a benefit for their staff to learn about the oldest continuous living culture in the world. My name is Rory Smeaton. I'm a proud Kurnow man from Gippsland, Victoria. I think recruiters look for candidates that are courteous, that have everything that they need, clean resumes, and are really keen for the role.
I'm Kyra Galanti. I'm a Gubborn woman from the Goldfields region of West Australia, Kalgoorlie, Coolgardie and Southern Cross. Communication, speak as clear as you can, but don't be too hard on yourself if you can't. And don't be afraid that if you don't understand the questions, ask them to rephrase it, ask it in another way so that you do understand it. It's important for you to understand the question, because I know even when they ask these questions, they use high-level language. And to be honest, I haven't even heard some of these words. So if I haven't heard them, I'll just ask them, change, what do you mean? What do you mean? So don't be afraid to ask, what do you mean?
My name's Fallon Wanganeen. I am a proud Narungga man, so the Narungga peoples are of the beautiful Yorke Peninsula in South Australia. If you are in the job hunt, make sure that you're providing contact details and contact times that are going to be suitable for you, because again, recruiters are very, very busy people. And if they've tried to call you and you've missed, then they kind of move on to the next person and get contact from them and so on and so forth, then you may miss an opportunity as well. So I think setting expectations with your recruiter in the first instance is really going to help.
My name is Desiree Kilduff. I'm a young Noongar professional living and working on Wiradjuri and Bunurong country. What a recruiter is really looking for while speaking to candidates is open and clear communication. So it's really important from the instant that you have lodged your application, if the recruiter is communicating with you, that you're very prompt, that you respond within an appropriate time frame, and you also outline any barriers such as you'll be unavailable on such and such date. So they're really understanding of when you are available, and just making that communication aspect of applying and going through that process really smooth. A candidate can communicate well during the application recruitment process by ensuring that they are prompt with their responses. So if the recruiter has a question about your CV or application or requires an extra document from you, that you are returning that in a prompt manner, it shows your interest as well as how you will work in the workplace as well.
Candidate can really show some really good communication skills through the process by being timely with emails. So if a recruiter sends you an email, respond within 24 hours if possible. If they leave you a voicemail, try call them back that same day. I think being on time with paperwork when they've sent it in are really some of the things that recruiters, it makes their life a lot easier, because sometimes recruiters are constantly ticking over. They might have 3 or 4 different roles, so if they've got everything they need for the process and you're the right candidate, the time to hire is much quicker than trying to scrounge around for paperwork that they need to be able to secure your job. So I think they're really some of the key things that you need to look out for.
So if you feel like you're going to stumble in trying to communicate, because you get anxious, you get nervous, drink water, but also explain to them that you are nervous and that you are anxious, because that will affect how you respond and how you communicate back. And so, that's probably the best one I can give around communication for that one.
I think candidate communication is really important, and I think responsiveness or being online or on call, on a phone number you've provided, on an email address that you've provided. Too many times do we have it where someone's provided an email address and we've tried to get in contact, and a week later or 2 weeks later they come back with a response. If you're in the market for a role, you have to be really onto the preferred methods of communication that you're onto as well. So I think just making sure that you're available and ready to talk holds you in good stead in terms of being able to speak to your recruiter at the earliest opportunity, and then also being referred to a hiring manager.
I think a candidate can, the enthusiasm is something you need to hold back, but you also need to show in the right way. So, through your interview process, if you do get a phone interview, is, talk about, why you're passionate about working for that place and how it relates to you. So, using things like, I've been really looking forward to this opportunity. This really aligns with, things that I'm looking forward to do later in life, and being those little buzzwords have been really great. Then through the interview process, thanking the hiring manager as well as the recruiter for the opportunity. Have just a little bit of a conversation going, I've always wanted to work here, or I've been here before and it's a really great environment. I've heard really great things. Those sort of enthusiastic things, really, stand out when a recruiter and that manager go through those resumes and go, I remember, Rory, he was, really talked about how he, really wanted to work here. Those things stand out. If you're too enthusiastic, sometimes it can leave, sometimes a bit of, what are they like in the workplace environment? That's fine. If that's your personality, go for it. But I think those little things of, we're trying to relate and actually talk about why you're actually going for the role. Again, if you just want to work because you want to work, recruiters and hiring managers will see through that, but if you're really enthusiastic and you're genuine about working in the workplace, talk about it and be genuine of why you actually want to work there.
I think, being open and friendly is always going to hold you in good stead, because again, that relationship is super important with your recruiter, as they're the one that are going to the business in terms of referring you on for what the role may be as well. So my thing has always been around building really good relationships, because if someone likes you, they're more likely to do something on your behalf as well. So be yourself, but also be really friendly, and I think you'll be fine.
To really show your enthusiasm and stand out during the recruitment process, you can definitely express that you're very interested in the role. A way that you can do this is during the pre-screening process or during the interview process. You can even just outline that, hey, I'm really interested in this role. I believe I have the experience and believe I would be a good fit for the position. Because letting the recruiter know, it definitely gives them a sense of that this person is very interested, and that, the recruiter will back you in that instance as well. As a First Nations employee, there are going to be some things that you want to let your employer know prior to your employment or within your employment, that you may need to take time for cultural sensitivities or practices, such as sorry business, any community events, or family commitments that you might have. So just really understanding, is the employer going to support you in that? And you'll get a good understanding of that, if you raise that initially during your interview or application process, is, you're outlining, this is what I need as a First Nations employee, and you'll be able to see if the employer is able to offer you that.
I think a First Nations person to bring up some cultural issues that they might have. I think being open and genuine and saying, this is my family setup, this is what I do. Again, you might be the youngest in your family, but you're the leader of the family, and you've got to take care of your brothers and sisters or your nieces and nephews. So put that on the table and say, look, this is what I do and this is me as a community member. But, saying how, that might not affect your work, but sometimes it might. You might get a call to go and support family members. But when you do that, I think to show going, well, this is who I am, and owning that. I think recruiters really like to see someone who owns their own story and actually can say, well, this is what I do, but I'm really committed to the company if it does happen. You know, if I have to leave early, I'll follow up the next day and work a little bit extra.
I think in terms of talking about any cultural sensitivities in the recruitment process, your best bet is to, during the process and application, if there's an opportunity during that form to self-identify as being Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander, absolutely take up that and tick that box, because there's going to be a dedicated team or a dedicated specialist at the end of that, normally coming from an Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander background as well, to support you through that process. If for whatever reason this particular organisation that you're going for doesn't have the opportunity to self-identify, again, depending on what your barrier is and depending on what part of the process it is I would just raise it at that particular time. If it's in terms of assessments, if it's in terms of the face-to-face interview or remote interview or whatever it may be, is wait till you get to that part of the process and just be open and honest with your recruiter, and they will make the accommodations for you as they require.
Ask where they're headed. Where are their commitments in the Indigenous participation and engagement space, because there's a reason why they're employing you, and that's the strength of it. So if you ask them what they're doing in that space, ask them why they want more Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people working for their business, then that will tell you what your strengths are and what you can bring to the table for that role.
I think bringing your whole self to work, bringing that culture, bringing your values and your behaviours is something that is absolutely a point of difference, and I think now in 2022 in Australia is starting to be really looked for by your colleagues and the organisation, and in a meaningful way. So not in a cultural load way where the expectations is that for First Nations initiatives or things is that all of the First Nations people need to be working on those particular things. But I think it's more so people in the employment sector and in organisations now really wanting to know more about culture and are really curious and want to start to build that awareness. And look, you may or may not be comfortable in doing that, which is absolutely fine, but I think there's a real opportunity that when we go to work is that we can start to be advocates and influence and share our culture with other people's, which is just going to make it better more broadly for our communities.
Now is a good time for First Nations peoples to be seeking employment, as a lot of organisations and businesses have Reconciliation Act plans that show their commitment and respect to First Nations people in the workplace and in the work that they do with their community. So it's a really good time to, show your skills, your connections, and be involved in a workplace that is committed to reconciliation.
I think more companies in employment are more committed these days, and a lot of the guidance is coming from the Reconciliation Action Plan, it's coming from their policies, it's also coming from the environment social governance space. So they're all wanting to do the right thing, they just don't know how to do it. But I think with the changing landscape in the environment, with more awareness that's being raised through and amplified through these different platforms like NAIDOC Week, National Reconciliation Week, or when they engage with Indigenous businesses, they are learning through everything, but they don't know everything. So employing more Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people is taking them on that journey for them to have people there working for them that can actually do the same, support them and give them a better understanding of why it's important, but why we have the value that we bring as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to the business, because that's the value add that they get and they gain from employing us and sharing, our two histories and our culture with them to embrace it.
Workplaces I've seen over my 15 years have definitely changed to be accommodating for First Nations communities. We have things in place now where it's not tokenistic. Workplaces genuinely see hiring First Nations people as a benefit. Our people bring a wealth of knowledge, and that thinking outside the box has been really critical for workplaces to grow. First Nations people also bring, a wealth of experience and a work ethic that I haven't seen before. A lot of First Nations people who haven't had an opportunity before, now they've gotten a job, are sometimes your best staff members. They want to work, they want to be the best. There are Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander, but they're also your best staff member. They're not just branded that way. So, having RAPs in place, having strategies have definitely helped. But I think the pathways for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to be senior leaders in organisations that's not tokenistic roles are genuine now, and workplaces are actually making a difference in doing that. So that's what I've seen.
I think one way that workplaces are changing to accommodate for First Nations peoples is by showing their commitment and their respect for First Nations peoples by including things like acknowledgements of country outside of buildings, welcome to countries at any formal events, as well as holding Reconciliation Act plans where they are strategically planning for the improvement of local community as well as their Indigenous staff members.
Fortunately now, in Australia, I think most places will have an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander recruitment, employment strategy, specialist team. Most places are signed up to reconciliation action plans now, so there are so many initiatives out there that organisations are actually being proactive in doing and understanding that, hey, there is a need for us to do this, and this is really important for us. And fortunately, us mob, we get to, reap the benefits of that as well, in terms of being able to, get opportunities where those opportunities may not have been before. So it's awesome to see that people are taking this a lot more seriously and are putting this into executive KPIs and really having it as a priority, which means that across the country we can get more and more mob into work, and not just any work, but real meaningful employments, and setting them up for careers and starting to break down those stereotypes and getting in those intergenerational barriers that have kind of been there, so that we can start to see more people in employment.